Hello everybody, this is Mr. McKeever here, and today we're going to talk about nationalism and liberalism in Europe in the 19th century. So you have to go back to, last time we talked about the Congress of Vienna and the impact of Napoleon on Europe. And the reality is what Napoleon did to Europe was not just wage war on the continent and win a bunch of territory and all that stuff. Well, he awoke in nationalism in Europe. He redefined for people what it meant to be of their national origin. So people became enamored with that heritage of where they came from, and that strong belief that that united people should have a state of their own in a place in the world. So we see this starting to become a predominant social movement in Europe during this time period, and it's largely due to the efforts of Napoleon when he started, replacing monarchs across Europe with people that he was more accustomed to dealing with, like his family. So, why is this an issue? Well, it's because there's a ton of different nationalities in Europe during this time period. And the Congress of Vienna was trying to find a way to eradicate nationalism. The reality is you can't. You had tons of social groups, tons of ethnic groups in Europe, like the Slavs and the Hungarians, the Magyars. By the way, those are just issues in Austria. The Irish in Great Britain. Tons of social groups. Belgians, Polish people, everywhere who wanted to have their own independent state. And then you had some ethnic groups that were divided, that maybe had a portion of the area that they wanted, but not all of it. People like the Italians and the Germans who are looking to unify their people together. So Europe is kind of in a weird spot. You have some nationalities who have been dominated by someone else, and you have other nationalities who are fractured amongst various different empires, and this is a situation that is going to spiral out of control. Well, then you have liberalism. And this is actually a movement that's going to be inspired by the people from the Enlightenment, people like Rousseau, who developed the idea of popular sovereignty, the idea that all people deserve a right to participate in government and have a voice. And this is going to be something that nationalists and the liberalist movement are going to, really identify with. They want to be able to determine the leadership of their nations. If you were a part of a minority, which is what these national movements and these liberals movements were, you had no voice in this current Europe. Well, they want to radically change that. They want to have the opportunity to participate in their government. Well, this all comes from developing a cultural identity. And the cultural identity of these places is really defined by a couple different things. It could be defined by a common language that they all speak. It could be defined by a common language that they all practice. Or it could be defined by common sets of stories and heritage that have been passed down from generation to generation, from their teachers and their mothers, their grandmothers, grandfathers, that they'd been consistently hearing for generations now. So all of these things contributed to creating a national identity. Add that with the Enlightenment idea of being able to have a voice, and we have a movement to nationalism that's going to change a lot of things. But that's only part of the equation here. Europe itself has been dealing with situations of nationalism for a long time, but they never really had a vehicle for that. Now, with the advent of, technology that's promoting more education and things like that, people are starting to be able to have a lot more academic debates on things. Academic debates like the Kleindeutsch versus Grossdeutsch debate. So if there are a ton of ethnic Germans in the central part of Europe, and Austrians who are actually Germanic in nature, should they be included in the creation of a united German empire? If that's the case, then how do you get the Austrians to buy along with this? How do you get other Germans who have been spending hundreds of years at war with Austrians to want to buy into this? And this united Germany versus uniquely German debate, the Gross versus Kleindeutsch, is going to start to really become a predominant concept and area of controversy in Europe during this time period. Nationalism is going to really unsettle things a bit. Even peoples united, or like peoples like the Germans, are divided in what it actually means to be German during this time period. Alright, So where is this going to be an issue? Well, it's going to be an issue pretty much everywhere. In Great Britain, the Irish want to be free. They want to have their own home rule. That doesn't even take into account the Scottish as well, who are looking for that, but not nearly to the degree that the Irish are. In Prussia, in the German area, the Germans want to have a united state. In Italy, the Italians are looking to have their own united state. In Eastern Europe, the Polish are looking to be free. And realistically, Austria is just too much of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different places. And then definitely cannot forget about the Ottoman Empire down to the southeast. Southeast. Places like Bulgaria and Greece and Romania, Albania, Serbia, all of them want to be free of Ottoman control. So, it's pretty much an everywhere thing. Alright, so let's start talking about liberalism then. Liberalism is also a social movement that's taking place during this time period that's built on the ideas of popular sovereignty, the notion that people should be able to have a voice in their government. And in 19th century Europe, liberalism was really anything that wanted change from the status quo. So something that is different. Now, this is very different than what we call liberalism today. Many of the ideas of liberal 19th century Europe are actually kind of the views of conservatism today. But that's just more of the transition in society, how society has changed over the last 150 or so years. Back then, what does it mean to be liberal? Well, it means you want legal equality between social classes. This does not mean equality between genders. It's social classes. You also want religious toleration. You want freedom of speech. Economically, it means the abolishment of mercantilism. You're actually looking to create laissez-faire economics and regulations on trade, on wages for workers. You're looking to create the world that Adam Smith actually hoped for in his Wealth of Nations. So these are the goals of liberalism. Well, we see these goals playing themselves out in certain areas of the world. A lot of the political goals of liberalism are actually really embodied in the American Revolution, the American Constitution that is created shortly after the American Revolution. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen also immortalized a lot of these ideas as well, even though it doesn't have the legal standing that the American Constitution does. The idea was to extend participation in the government, but not create universal suffrage, universal right to votes. That wasn't on the table yet. By the end of the 19th century, it will start to become a common occurrence in Europe, but not yet. Really, the big idea was to eliminate the influence of government on your day-to-day life. Government was born from the consent of the people. It should not be what determines the lives of the people. Economically, as we already stated, the goal was to kind of create this laissez-faire economics that Adam Smith had described. A system, very hands-off, allow economics to run its thing, do not become involved, which is kind of the exact opposite of what liberals today view economically. So how do these two movements work? Well, they're kind of complementary. Oftentimes people who are nationalists do favor liberalist ideas. The idea that popular sovereignty is the key to everything is similar to both movements. What we don't see is liberalism and conservatism together. They're kind of contradictory notions. We do see occasionally a conservative movement that will rally behind nationalism, but that's pretty rare and pretty exclusive to kind of the situation that takes place in Germany. But for the most part, these two movements are going to work hand in hand to radically change the political situation of Europe in the 19th century. And that pretty much sums it up for today. Thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye.